I think this one's going to be deserving of a beer because we're going to talk about backpacking gear that I have wasted money on. We are fully diving into buyer's remorse. We're going to talk about backpacking gear that I have recently purchased and some backpacking gear that I purchased quite a while ago, and just, you know, the reasons behind why this gear just never worked out for me. And I'm not trying to say that any of the gear in this video is bad. We're just, you know, this gear just did not work out for me. So if this is some gear that you use, you know, please don't take offense to it. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. It's just, you know, some gear just doesn't work out for one person, and it may be the greatest piece of gear to the next person. As many people know, I am a lover of alcohol stoves. I use a homemade DIY cat food can stove. This guy right here, this is my DIY fancy piece stove. And with alcohol stoves, you know, they are very, very prone to wind, and, you know, you don't want any wind blowing up against them. The stoves just don't perform very well. And this is what I've been using for a windscreen. It's literally just kind of like a thicker piece of tin foil, and that's what I've been using as a windscreen. It's pretty light. I don't know the exact weight of it off the top of my head, but very, very lightweight, you know, very malleable, and I like that it fits inside the pot. I'm always on the lookout for kind of the next piece of gear that could be game-changing for myself. And a big thing for me kind of going towards the ultralight gear realm has been titanium. And I've been, you know, using a titanium cook pot, been using a titanium spork, and I decided to go and get myself a titanium windscreen. The cheapest place I could find one was on AliExpress, and that's where I ordered this guy here. It comes in a bunch of different panels. I think there was like 2 or 3 more panels with it. Interconnect your pieces in like that, and that's kind of what you get. In the smallest setting here, you know, it kind of gives you an idea of how big the windscreen is. My pot doesn't fit. The second smallest setting, obviously my pot fits, but you know, it's huge. There's tons of room around it. The primary reason that I decided to never use this and just scrap the idea altogether is actually safety related. I don't know if you can tell here, but, you know, this is very, very thin titanium, and the edges here are ridiculously sharp. And the very first time I pulled this out and tried to, you know, like fit these little pieces together, I sliced my hand open pretty good. And honestly, probably could have used some stitches, but you know, me being me, I just patched it up with some crazy glue because that's what I do. So I just stuck with the thicker tinfoil that I've been using, and this works great. Next buyer's remorse that I have when it comes to backpacking gear, it's actually a piece of 3F UL gear, a company I'm a very, very big fan of. And I saw this online on AliExpress, and it was just kind of one of those impulse buys, and that is a bivy sack. If you're not sure what a bivy sack is, your sleeping bag goes inside of it. You can seal off, and it'll give you a little bit of protection from the elements if you're, you know, not using a shelter, or it'll even help boost the temperature rating of your sleep system. And that's the reason that I picked up this bivy sack. Getting into hot tent trips with Bo and some of the boys, you know, we were doing some ground sleeping, and, you know, we've got the stove inside the hot tent to fire up and kind of warm things up throughout the night. But you just never know in the Rockies when temps are going to dip ridiculously low. And, you know, using the 2 quilts that I'm bringing with me, I know that I can get down to around minus 30 degrees Celsius, which is pretty freaking cold. But it does quite often get a lot colder than that out in the Rockies. So I figured picking myself up a lightweight, cheap bivy sack would really kind of help boost the temperature rating of my sleep system. And just in testing it out at home, you know, like I always suggest to do with any new gear you're picking up, test it out at home. I used this bivy sack at home, tested it out, and it was just a massive failure for me. Yes, it did boost the temperature rating of my sleep system. You know, I did have a night where it got to about minus 36 degrees Celsius, and I went out and, you know, set up my sleep system out on the deck. It was going to crash out of the deck for a couple hours. The bivy sack stopped any moisture from getting out, you know, so as you're sleeping throughout the night, you know, you don't want moisture to get trapped up against your body. You want that moisture to have a place to go. And I found the bivy sack just stopped the moisture from going anywhere, and it held it inside. And yeah, my down quilts got a little damp. Luckily, I was at home, so I just went inside and warmed up. But, you know, had I been out in the backcountry, that could have been a really, really bad night for myself. So, you know, a bivy sack just did not work out for me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe there's, you know, different factors that I'm not taking into account. But yeah, the 3F UL bivy sack was a huge failure for me. Now this one, I'm sure all the trolls are going to love down in the comment section, because I'm going to call Darn Tough Socks a gear purchasing regret. I bit hard at one point, and I kind of went all in on the Darn Tough Socks when they were kind of, you know, the big thing in the hiking world. I mean, I guess like they're still a big thing, But yeah, I went all in and I purchased a crap load of pairs of Darn Tough socks. Initially, I loved them. Honestly, I thought they were really, really comfortable socks. They're great in the wintertime. They keep my feet really warm. Making the switch to trail runners was a big change for me in terms of just sort of my backpacking style as a whole. You know, it sped things up for me. It made me a little more efficient out on trail. You know, I wasn't having to carry water crossing shoes anymore. I wasn't having to carry flip-flops, and I wasn't having to stop, you know, change my footwear every time I came up to a creek crossing. It just, you know, it sped things up for me. You know, a lot of the backpacking trips that I'm doing now are in a lot more remote, less accessible areas of the Rockies, and a lot of them require a ton of water crossings. Big issue that I had with the Darn Tough socks is they just simply weren't drying out fast enough. My feet were staying wet for a lot longer than I really felt they should have. And you know, when your feet and your hands kind of get wet and they're in that really moist environment for a long time and they feel clammy and your skin starts to prune up, well, that was happening to me and I was getting a ton of blisters. I thought, hey, you've already got long hair and everybody thinks you're a hippie anyway, so why not go and try out the toe socks? And since making the switch to the Injinji toe socks, I can honestly say I have not once had a blister on a summer backpacking trip. Where I was finding I was getting a lot of the blisters was in between my toes. And just, you know, having that little bit of fabric separation between your toes has been huge for me. Like I said, 0 blisters whatsoever. And I find the Injinji toe socks and sort of any more synthetic based sock, they dry out so much faster. And the collection of Darn Toughs that I accumulated, you know, I think I was up to like 5 or 6 pairs. These are strictly work socks, and you know, I love them for work socks because Darn Tough has a fantastic warranty. And if any of you guys wear construction or wear steel-toed boots every single day, you guys know that, you know, steel-toed boots tend to eat socks. So having socks with a lifetime warranty is awesome. And the Darn Toughs are just work socks to me now. You guys are probably wondering, Matty, what is in the bag, or what's in the stuff sack? A stuff sack full of stuff sacks. Literally all that is inside this stuff sack is a plethora of different stuff sacks. Some of these are stuff sacks that came with pieces of gear, like this guy here. This is an Outdoor Vitals stuff sack. I'm 99% sure this came with my Outdoor Vitals 0 degree Loft Tech underquilt. But a lot of these stuff sacks are ones that I purchased. You know, you've got dry bags and dry bags with vents on the bottom of them, and just standard dry bags, and just different stuff sacks and compression sacks and more compression sacks. And if any of you guys have, you know, bought stuff sacks and compression sacks and that kind of thing, you know that they are not always the cheapest thing. You know, I mean, most compression sacks you're looking at like 20 to 30 bucks. Where this becomes a kind of a gear purchasing regret for me is obviously all these stuff sacks sit in another giant stuff sack, because honestly none of them ever get used. I really started to find that, you know, having all my gear compartmentalized into different stuff sacks, well, it was really nice for, you know, I could look and say, oh, this green one, I know what's in there, I know what's in this blue and black one, I know what's in this blue one. But at the end of the day, you know, it made packing really, really inefficient. I've talked at lengths before about, you know, how I switched away from using compression sacks for my quilts in my backpack because, you know, they make this like little hard, like, you know, watermelon shaped thing, and you get a lot of dead space around the side of different stuff sacks, and that's kind of primarily the reason that I switched away from them. You know, I used to carry a lot of my gear in dry bags. You know, I was a big fan of these, you know, Sea to Summit dry bags, and they work great. They keep your gear ridiculously dry, but they are heavy. This Sea to Summit dry bag here, just on its own, weighs more than the trash compactor bag that I now line my pack with. And I don't carry any dry bags in my pack. Any pieces of gear that I'm worried about getting wet, they just go inside the trash compactor bag. They get stuffed down to the bottom of my pack. I roll the top up on that. And, you know, for years, that's how I've been doing it. And I have never once had any of my gear inside get wet. And that's the reason why all of these stuff sacks sit inside the bigger stuff sack. They're just kind of collecting dust in my gear room, and they come out for the purposes of making YouTube videos when I want to dish stuff sacks. Now we're going to talk about the piece of gear that I wasted the most money on in this video, and we're going to talk about what I've got in front of me here, which is my Solo 0 degree synthetic sleeping bag. A number of years ago, I was looking for a, you know, winter rated sleeping bag, or a new winter rated sleeping bag, and a friend of mine had, you know, sent me a text. They were at an outdoor store, and this store had a bunch of sleeping bags on clearance, and they said, hey, they've got this really nice, you know, 0 degree Solo bag on clearance for, I think it was like 250 bucks. And I thought, hey, sweet, that's a wicked deal. You know, I'll e-transfer you some money. And my friend picked this bag up for me. And it's just kind of one of those things I wish at the time I would have, you know, not been busy doing whatever it is I was doing. And I wish I would have, you know, just asked more questions on the bag in question. Because, you know, when it got to my house and I took a look at it, it was a lot bigger and a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. You know, it's synthetic, so it doesn't pack down very small. And, you know, I already had a 0 degree bag. It was kind of, you know, a bag I was looking to replace. It was a cheaper one. And I thought, hey, a Solo makes really good gear. But yeah, a synthetic winter rated sleeping bag is just not something that I'm ever going to carry with me. You know, even when I was carrying bigger, bulkier, heavier gear, I was always using down sleeping bags. And just a 0 degree synthetic bag is just, yeah, it's never gone on a backpacking trip with me. This has strictly been for car camping. This sleeping bag honestly just tends to live in either the back of my Jeep or this past winter in the back of my truck. You know, it's great for just having as kind of an emergency thing if I ever need it, if I'm ever, you know, stranded out in, you know, one of these ridiculous -30 Canadian winter days and, you know, my truck breaks down or whatever. I've got something in there that can keep me warm in a pinch. But, you know, that's about as far as it's ever gotten. You know, and it's not a bad piece of gear by any means. You know, it's a nice mummy sleeping bag. You know, it's got a nice little collar around the hood and, you know, all the cinches, really nice zipper that doesn't stick. But in terms of backpacking gear, it's just not going to cut it for me. But now that we've gone through my pieces of gear that I've wasted money on, I'm going to turn it to you guys because I want to know what pieces of backpacking gear you guys have wasted money on. So let me know in the comments down below. I love, you know, the conversations that tend to come from videos like this. And if you guys are looking for more gear that I have no interest in, you know, if you enjoyed this video and thought it was a lot of fun, which I had a lot of fun filming it, I've got a couple videos here on backpacking gear I've got no interest in. So when you're done with this one, check out either of those. I'm sure you enjoy. And as always, I'm Matty. Thank you so dang much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.